Hi, long time no see, so we're gonna jump straight into the news. Russia intensified attacks on Ukrainian cities this week. Is the fighting still happening in Bakhmut? Xi's visit to Russia, and what that means for the world. With that, hi, my name is Yulia and you're watching The Brief, where we talk about everything that happened in and around Ukraine in the week thus far in about 20 minutes. Let's go. Zaporizhzhia reported a powerful attack by the Russians. And of course, those attacks were on civilian infrastructure. There were hits on residential buildings. 3 people were confirmed dead and 2 injured. It was believed that the damage was inflicted by Grad multiple rocket launch systems. Then Yuri Ihnat came out and said that it was likely Tornado S, which is an anti-aircraft missile complex system. This is missile artillery. It flies very quickly, from launch to hit in practically a second. If our defense forces can declare that rocket or barrel artillery will work, then it is certainly done. If there is no such opportunity, there is no intelligence, then there may be terrorist attacks by the enemy, which are not the first time that they have been carried out in residential areas or cities. The next airstrike landed on a 3-story residential building in Odessa. 3 people were confirmed injured. On the night of March 22nd, another missile landed on a dormitory in Kyiv region. Again, 3 people were confirmed dead, 2 confirmed injured, 1 was rescued, and 4 are likely still under the rubble. Rescue operations, however, are still ongoing, but Ukraine will keep fighting, as evidenced by this photo of a Ukrainian flag that is so symbolic in a window in Zaporizhzhia region. And just to demonstrate to you the severity with which Russians attacked Ukraine this year, here is a cemetery of missile shells in Kharkiv region. The Guardian showed the test site where the wreckage of the rocket systems of the Salva fire, from which Kharkiv region was shelled, is stored. According to the estimates of the armed forces of Ukraine, since the beginning of the war, the Russian Federation has fired more than 5,000 cruise missiles in Ukraine and countless artillery shells. The study analysis of ammunition is of crucial importance for the investigation of responsibility for war crimes on the territory of the country. And speaking of which, turn on all of your notifications and don't forget to check out yulia.com, where you will find the coolest merch on the internet that helps the armed forces of Ukraine. Obviously, I'm not biased when I say that, and if you really want to support me, don't forget to sign up for my Patreon, where you can see countless photos of adorable Cine and vote on which content comes to the channel next. Thank you! What's been going on in Ukraine? Ukraine desperately needs air defense systems to protect the population of the country from the rocket attacks that you've seen in the previous section. And that was communicated by Yevhen Kornichuk, who is the ambassador of Ukraine to Israel. The diplomat spoke at the conference on the anniversary of the Russian-Ukrainian war, organized by the Minister of Diaspora Affairs and Anti-Semitism, Amichai Chikli. Kornichuk emphasized that the aggressor country attacks mainly the civilian population and civilian infrastructure, hospitals, schools, kindergartens, etc. The Ukrainian diplomat noted that Russia's terrorist activities must be stopped immediately and civilians must have a chance to survive. However, Ukraine is quite good at countering most of these attacks thanks to all of the help that we've received, and here is how.
Disaster.
And of course, Ukraine is also great at counterintelligence and therefore inflicting damage. I'm sure by now most of you have heard about the drone attack on the city of Dzhankoi in Crimea. An explosion destroyed Russian Caliber and K cruise missiles while they were being in transport. Rumor has it that Ukraine hacked into the Iranian Shahed drones and turned them around to attack Russia instead of Ukraine. The interesting part is also that these cruise missiles are incredibly low in stock in Russia, and they can only produce about 30 of those a month. So that's an incredible counterintelligence operation if you ask me. Apparently so successful that the occupying authorities in the city of Dzhankoi announced that they have implemented state of emergency at the municipal level. But everything is okay, of course, because everything is always okay in Russia. State of emergency at municipal level, nonetheless. There is also a state of emergency that Russia did not announce in the city of Mariupol, but unfortunately all the damage that was inflicted by Russia, and here are some new photos that came out from Mariupol. Take a look at how Russia is rebuilding the city. And in the news about another city that has been the talk of the town in the past couple of months that Russia has destroyed as well, Bakhmut counteroffensive is slowing down, and it's slowing down rapidly. The armed forces of Ukraine conducted a successful counterattack west of Bakhmut and pushed back the Russians in the area of the settlement of Ivanivsky, according to Institute for the Study of War. As confirmation, experts used geolocation footage published on March 19th. They show that Ukrainian troops conducted a successful counterattack southwest of Ivanivsky and pushed back Russian forces from the T-0504 route in that area. Russian sources released footage purportedly showing a column of Ukrainian armored vehicles southwest of Konstantinivka. They suggested that the Ukrainians were preparing for a counteroffensive from there. Concerns about this development of events are also expressed by some of the Russian military, which may indicate a growing lack of confidence in the ability of the Russian military to retain the initiative around Bakhmut. In general, Institute for the Study of War believes that the so-called Great Spring Offensive of the Russian Federation in the east is reaching its peak and is not having the proper effect. Despite the general use of about 300,000 manpower in Ukraine, analysts believe that reducing the enemy's forces will allow the Ukrainians to launch their counteroffensive soon in critical areas of the front. And of course, Russians are planning on doing an even more massive counteroffensive in the summer, and therefore they'll need everything they can get, and obviously due to their failures in Bakhmut, they're likely to relocate whatever is left from their military to another location. And speaking of losses, a rumor has been released recently that Ukrainian military has suffered 100,000 losses in troops. But Alexei Danilov came out with a statement that denies it. I declare with full responsibility that we do not have 100,000 casualties among the military. This is impossible. This is closed information during the war, and 100,000 is a complete lie, he said. And speaking of honesty, or rather, a country where politicians are not as honest. Meanwhile, in Russia, Putin plans to visit South Africa in August, and the authorities there say that they're fully aware of the obligations that are placed on them with the warrant for his arrest. We take note of the report on the arrest warrant issued by the ICC. South Africa remains committed and keen to see the conflict in Ukraine resolved peacefully through negotiations. That language suggests that they don't want to arrest him, but the implications of not doing so and not extraditing him would be crucial. So hopefully he makes the visit and gets arrested, or better for him, he shouldn't. And speaking of his visit to Africa, now African languages will be studied in Russian schools. Funny, because minority languages are not studied in Russian schools, but African languages now will be. And here's why. We are educating a new generation of people who are able to understand the mentality and basic models of African development, and to understand that Africa is not just a big and unified country. Well, the fact that you need to teach them languages so they could understand that Africa is a continent, not a country, is telling. Very telling. Maybe you should start with letting your minorities study their own languages, because there's like 130 of them in Russia, right? None of them actually speak their native languages, but what do I know? And of course, another event that's been all over the news this week is the visit of Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, to Russia to meet with Putin, where Putin was hoping that it would bring incredible results and China would potentially agree to transfer lethal weapons to Russia. But what really happened out of it is a very underwhelming development. We are grateful to China for its balanced line regarding the events in Ukraine. We welcome China's readiness to play a constructive role in resolving the crisis. Russia is open to political and diplomatic settlements considering current geopolitical realities. We did not stop the peace talks, and ultimatums to Russia speak only of disinterest in finding a way out of the current situation. Yeah, Putin says peaceful resolution, and in the meanwhile, as these words leave his mouth, missiles land on Ukrainian cities. But again, what do I know about peaceful resolutions? Apparently, Xi Jinping knows a lot, because Russia was hoping that China would provide them with lethal weapons for the war in Ukraine. However, no evidence of China being ready to do so has been recorded by any intelligence services around the world. And that has been confirmed by Jens Stoltenberg himself. And speaking of intelligence services, officials next to Putin are rumored to have been ordered to replace all iPhones with alternate phones. Chinese, perhaps? And the deadline is end of March. According to him, these phones are more vulnerable to hacker attacks and espionage. Yeah, because China is not going to be paying very close attention to what you're doing with your other smartphones. I was just about to say that what if they come back to that failed Russian Aurora phone? And you know what? This is exactly what the news tells me, is that these officials have been offered to replace their iPhones with a domestic alternative based on the operation system Aurora that, if you remember, last year was presented and said to have been developed from scratch in Russia, and then it turned out it is literally Android. Yeah, so they're gonna be using a knockoff Android. Advancement in technology, if you ask me. So hard to hack. And right after that news, an arrest warrant for Putin has been issued for life. People, wherever they are, must understand that there is a law and that with power comes responsibility. There is no time limit for war crimes, prosecutor at The Hague said. And to that accord, Dmitry Medvedev, the former, what was he? Prime Minister, President, Prime Minister, and now an ambiguous Russian political figure, threatened the criminal court. The ICC judges were not worried in vain. Look, they say we're brave. We didn't hesitate to raise a hand against the largest nuclear power. Unfortunately, gentlemen, everyone goes under God and rockets. One can imagine the targeted use of the hypersonic Onyx from the North Sea from a Russian ship on the Hague court building. Unfortunately, it cannot be shot down. Onyx is a Soviet medium-range hypersonic missile system designed to combat ground infrastructure. The speed of these missiles makes it difficult for enemy missiles to hit them. And the Russians have already used these missiles on the territory of Ukraine during the full-scale invasion, and Medvedev had just threatened The Hague to be blown up with an Onyx missile in response for an arrest issued for Putin due to war crimes. He responds with threatening a war crime. And as if that wasn't ridiculous enough, the investigative committee of the Russian Federation announced a court case, a criminal court case, against the prosecutor and the judges at The Hague. Yep. The Investigative Committee of Russia opened a criminal case against the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Ahmad Khan, judges of the International Criminal Court, Tomoko Akane, Rosario Salvatore Aitala, and Sergio Gerardo Ugalde Godinez. The Investigative Committee of the Russian Federation said in a statement. And what are they going to do? How are they going to prosecute those people? If they ever appear in Russia? Yeah. Good luck with that. And as with every circus, performance is usually over at a certain time, and that's how we arrive to a new section. International affairs. Germany stated that they will arrest Putin if he appears on the territory of the country. The minister expects that the ICC will quickly turn to Interpol, as well as to the contracting states to ask them to implement the decision as well. And in honor of that, the head of the Investigative Committee of Russia instructed to give a legal assessment of these statements. They want to legally assess how likely it is that Germany is going to arrest Putin. Like, they have nothing else to investigate, huh? Then John Kirby had delivered some more detrimental news to Russia. He said that Russia and China are undermining the international order. Both countries are undermining the rules-based international order that the United States and many of our allies and partners built after the end of World War II. They would like to rewrite the rules of the game around the world. And here is a much broader statement from him in a video.
We've been monitoring the best we can. Of course, we're not in the room, so we can't tell exactly what these two leaders are talking about. And we made it very clear last week, Mika, that one of the things that we'd be concerned coming out of this two-day meeting is some sort of call for a ceasefire, because we believe that that would just at this time ratify Russia's conquest. And we've also been very clear that while these two nations can certainly have bilateral relations, we don't view this discussion or this burgeoning closeness of these two countries as anything more than a marriage of convenience. President Xi finds in President Putin a useful foil for chafing or bristling or pushing back at U.S. leadership around the world, certainly on the European continent. And President Putin needs President Xi because he's running out of ammunition. He's running out of the kind of inventory that he needs to continue to fight this war. And it's likely that he's going to be looking for more help from China.
Admiral, President Xi and the Chinese government claim to have brought with them to Moscow a proposal for a resolution in the conflict of Ukraine. President Putin said yesterday he viewed that with respect, whatever that means exactly. Do you believe that China, do you believe that President Xi has the power to influence Vladimir Putin over Ukraine?
He certainly has influence over President Putin. There's no question about that, because you can just see how aggressively President Putin has been seeking President Xi's approval and President Xi's assistance in helping him fight this war in Ukraine. Whether he has that much influence over President Putin, I think remains to be seen. I will say this, Willie. To date, President Putin has shown absolutely zero interest in ending this war. And he could end it today. We don't even have to go to the negotiating table. He just pull his troops out. Shown no interest in doing that. Quite the contrary. He continues to bomb innocent Ukrainian citizens, continues to deport their children, continues to strike at their civilian infrastructure. So he has shown no indication. We're judging him on his actions, not his words.
He does say that the relationship between Xi Jinping and Putin is that of convenience. He points out that the Russian autocrat desperately needs Chinese help, specifically in the area of lethal weaponry. And despite that, President Joe Biden will meet with Xi Jinping at a convenient time, as he wants to keep the conversation with China open. The president wants to keep the channels of communication open with China. You heard what he said. You heard that he said a few days ago that he intends to negotiate a new opportunity for contact with the President of the People's Republic of China, Xi Jinping. Kirby said when asked about possible contacts between the two leaders in connection with the upcoming visit of the President of the People's Republic of China to Moscow. And then another world leader, Petr Pavel, the Czech president, has expressed his concern about weapons deliveries to Ukraine. This year, Ukraine will only have one chance at the counteroffensive. In his opinion, this counteroffensive should take place in the coming months. This year, a window of opportunity has opened. After next winter, it will be challenging to maintain the current level of assistance. And despite that, the European Union had just approved a plan to supply $2 billion worth of ammunition to Ukraine, and other leaders are not so skeptical. And of course, it would not be Hungary if it did not participate in controversy. This time around, the warrant for Putin's arrest, of course. Hungary blocked the joint statement of EU on the ICC's warrant for his arrest. And Joseph Borrell had to make a statement on his behalf. The EU considers the decision of the ICC as the beginning of the process of holding Russian leaders accountable for the crimes and atrocities they order and allow or carry out in Ukraine. Hungary refused to sign a statement that had much stricter language in it, and therefore the statement had to be changed to the language similar in Joseph Borrell's address. However, leaders of some other states might insist on stricter wording. And we'll conclude today's brief with this statement. NATO will more than double its border with Russia by 1,300 kilometers. How? Well, that will happen after Finland joins it. Putin invaded Ukraine intending to have less NATO in Europe. He does the opposite. NATO will be more in Europe, as evidenced by the fact that both Finland and Sweden had applied and received invitations to become full members, said Jens Stoltenberg. And on a such positive note, that's all I have for you for today. And you already know to not forget to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel, and turn on all of your notifications so you don't miss when the next one comes out. Don't forget to check out yulia.com, where you can find amazing merch I've developed with 5 awesome artists, and 50% of the profits from sales go to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And if you'd like to be extra supportive, I will be so grateful for that. Don't forget to sign up for my Patreon, where you can see countless photos of Cine, and you can vote on what content comes to the channel next. As always, check your sources, don't fall for propaganda, and I will see you next time. Hi, just really quick, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to my channel,